Hello, folks. Welcome to my channel, Art for All. Today's focus is to teach you painting and art lessons. I'm starting this new series whereby I'll teach you art and painting lessons. We will start by using still life to learn the drawing and art skills and to really fine tune our art and drawing skills. So, we will begin with still life because object drawing has always been a good starting point and it is highly effective in training the artistic hand and eye movement to work together because it's very important for your hand and eye movements to coordinate within a very short period of time. It will allow you as a viewer to get confidence to be able to draw much more complex things that you encounter, like landscapes, faces, figures, and so on and so forth. So let's deep dive into the learning still life and drawing that how how we can improve our hand-eye coordination and how we can develop our observational skills when we see a drawing. Sometimes, if you have seen or observed about yourself that when you see an object in certain way for hours, and then suddenly the view of that object changes quite differently after observing it for certain time period. So this is when you start correcting your object or trying to understand how you can modify your drawing, and you do that. So still life drawing allows is very easy because it allows you to do things in more relaxed manner. Like you are not, if you talk about the same opportunity with landscape, it does not exist because weather changes, the landscape that you are drawing is under different weather conditions during the daytime, or people move from your landscapes, right? So that's why it's easier to start with still life because it is less complex and it has more relaxed setting. So when we talk about how to start drawing from still life, you have to understand still life encourages you to really look closely before even you start putting things on a paper with a pencil. So you have to observe. First thing that you have to do is you have to observe your objects which are resting upon a surface. Like you have to observe that object which is resting on a surface to the extent that you understand what angle is this object, what angle you should choose when you put that object in drawing, what texture does it have, are there any highlights or shadows playing upon it, and so on so forth. And when you talk about in still life, drawing a group of objects, it requires altogether different observational skills because now you're looking at things in relation to one another. You are trying to understand how this object relate to where the other object is placed and what angles and what lines, and then the things, more mature things comes into consideration like proportions, perspectives, and so on so forth. So this seems like a very daunting task, but as you carry forward in my art lessons, it will become easier. So always remember that the fundamental principle that you are interpreting objects in line and tone, and you are in charge of what is included in that line and tone and what is left out. So this gives you a lot of power and confidence. So let's start exploring different fundamental basic principle in art. The very first principle that I want to talk about is lines into shapes. It's these lines that start taking these shapes before you even start drawing. Let's try the practice and understand the basics of it. So once you master these basics, the drawing and art skills will improve a lot. So this is essential for complete beginner and even for experienced artists, and it is very useful. If you are want to draw well, then don't forget the very first talk thing that I talked about, that you should have a good control over eye and hand movement. And for that, I'm going to give you a lot of exercises to do so that your training towards connection between eye and hand movement becomes stronger. So Let's start with a basic example and simplest, most helpful exercise. So, going to give you a drawing freehand exercises, and I want you to repeat them more and more so that you become more and more competent and confident in how you draw paintings. So, let's start with first of all, I want you to take pencil and paper and really practice eye and hand synchronization. So how I want to you to practice is I'll give you the very first exercise. So in this very first exercise I will ask you to begin drawing vertical lines. Keep them straight and same length. So that's the first exercise. The second exercise that I'll give you, produce a square with series of evenly spaced horizontal lines. The third exercise I'll give you is draw diagonal lines from top to bottom, varying the length while keeping the spacing consistent. Now let's do another exercise. Let's draw diagonal line from top left to bottom right. You may find the change of angle very strange for yourself, but don't get worried and try drawing these lines which are parallel to each other. So these are the five simple exercises that I gave you to practice hand and eye coordination. So let's move further. So far we talked about lines. What if we talk about more difficult task, which is like drawing a circle? I want you to draw a series of circles now as a practice session. Now I want you to draw a series of circles which are of the same size and keep drawing them until circles on the paper in front of you look like perfect ones. So when you achieve that, your hand and eye are trained. So I taught you two, three concepts so far. Now let's talk about another concept which is called exercises in techniques. We talked about exercises in lines as a shape. Now let's do exercises in technique. There is a certain exercise that I want you to do to for you to ease your way into drawing in a range of different styles. And there are, of course, many more that you can do. You will discover other methods through own investigation and adapt them to serve your purpose. So, the only way right now is learn the pencil shading skills. I want you to practice the pencil shading skills in various ways to understand the different tones that you can achieve. The value concept in drawing, the different tones of the color that you can achieve. This exercise may seem quite difficult, but it is quite good fun. So once you start doing it and you can repeat it over a period of time, you will start getting control. It will give you control over your pencil and it becomes very valuable. So for this exercise, I want you to start with a dark pencil 4B and slightly less dark pencil 2B. So what you have to do is you have to draw out a long line of squares which are about 1 inch, and you have to shade each square starting with totally black one on the left and allow the next square to be slightly lighter, and so on, gradually shading each square as uniformly as possible with lighter and lighter touch until you arrive at a white square. So that's how you will practice exercise in techniques. So this is the second biggest fundamentals. You have to understand these tones, and these tones are the value composition. Now let's learn another good concept, which is cross hatching. How you can build these tones by cross hatching. So what I want you to do, and now there is another practice exercise. I want you to take a plain piece of paper and draw vertical strokes first close together. Then I want you to draw oblique strokes from top right to bottom left of the strokes. Then I want you to draw horizontal strokes over the vertical strokes. Then make oblique strokes from top left to bottom right, and then you can smoothen them by achieving over marks with a stub. So this is how you can practice on how you can exercise on technique. And you can do this exercise with a pencil The most easiest way is to do with a pencil, whereby you use these backward and forward motion of the hand in oblique direction, and you produce the same backward and forward motion in vertical and the same backward forward motion horizontally. So I gave you a pause and a breather while you practice. So if you're done with this, now you can do same exercise of vertical, horizontal and oblique lines with a pen and a ink or a marker or a chalk. And you can try learning these shading techniques, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and so on and so forth. With a chalk, you make patches of short stroke in different directions. You use vertical line close together in one direction, then you use horizontal line close together in one direction, then you use oblique lines together in one direction, then you repeat and draw vertical lines, then you draw oblique lines in the other direction, and then you use horizontal lines, and so on and so forth. You can do the same series of exercises similar to the ones that I just talked to you about with marker and chalk, and only difference is that now there is a texture. You will try to provide a texture with the chalk. So I want you to do this exercise while I'll give you a pause. So now next most important concept that I want to touch upon in your drawing skills class is three dimension. Every object you draw, you will have to appear it in three dimensional. If you want to convince the viewer who's seeing your painting is that it is close to reality, so you draw them, show them it is done in the three dimensional space. So rather than having a square, I want you to draw a cube or a cuboid. So you draw a square, you draw lines that are parallel from each of the top corners and bottom right corners and join them to complete the cube. Similarly, you do that for your square, you do that for your cuboid. Even for circle, you can make circle, instead of keeping it as a circle, you draw a sphere and you represent how you're applied tones to it. You try to capture the light. Where is the light shining on the sphere? It is coming from top left. You try to shade the area in layer of tone, and you try to draw in shadow from the lower edge on the right side and increase the depth and add a new crescent of darkish tone. I'll give you a pause while you practice. And you can do these exercises with other object shapes like ellipses. You can draw a glass and try to draw ellipses in it. Then you can do the similar exercise with cylinder when we have cylindrical objects. So now you show them in three-dimensional space rather than two space. So those are the three basic fundamentals that I touched upon with you, is that everything is in three-dimensional space. There are lines which are forming the shape, and then there is the tones, the value tones that you try to understand by shading. So that is all I have to teach in today's class. See you all together again in Art for All next drawing class. Thank you for joining me, and I really appreciate your time. And I will continue these series of painting lessons um, every now and then to teach you how to draw and paint correctly. Enjoy this session. Art for All. Thank you. Appreciate it, your time, and see you in the next class. Stay tuned till then. Bye.